Welcome to the first lesson of mobile editing magic. A well-filmed high-quality video is like having good foundations for a home. Good foundations must come first before finalizing and decorating a gorgeous home. In the same way, without good video foundations, no amount of editing and trimming will make your final video better. A good grasp of these basics will not only enhance your technical skills, but also empower you to express your creative vision effectively. In this lesson, we'll first focus on all of the factors that contribute to the quality of a video. Then, in the next lesson, we'll cover topics such as camera settings, video composition, focal length, and more. By the end of these two lessons, you will have a robust understanding of video filming techniques that will significantly improve your video editing outcomes as well. Let's start by heading into our phone camera settings and explain video resolution, frame rate, and some other settings to ensure you're capturing the highest quality videos. First, HD versus 4K. What does this mean? HD means high definition and typically refers to videos of the size 1080 x 1920 or 1920 x 1080 for horizontal videos. These numbers represent the number of pixels in a frame. So 1080p means the shortest side there are 1080 pixels and on the longest side there are 1920 pixels, making this ratio a 9:16 ratio. 4K, on the other hand, confusingly represents the number of pixels on the longer side, which is 3840, which is essentially double of 1920, and the shorter side is 2160, which is double of 1080. And that also makes it a 9:16 ratio video, but twice as large in pixel size compared to HD or 1080p. So the reason why 4K is higher quality than HD is because it's actually twice the size of 1080p, meaning it captures more details and looks sharper. However, that also means that the file size is roughly double in size. So I personally always film in 4K because it allows me to crop in when necessary. While it is fine to film in HD or 1080p, I do recommend that you film in 4K whenever possible and set this as your default. This ensures that you have the highest quality footage, and this becomes important when you're editing match cut transitions, as you'll likely need to crop in and rotate it to match it exactly, which we'll explain later. However, although I film in 4K, that does not mean I upload in 4K as my final real upload. Social media platforms prefer users to upload 1080p videos, so it's best to film in 4K, edit in that 4K footage, then export the final video from your editing software as a 1080p video and then upload that to your social media platforms. Next, let's explain what this little number on the top corner means. This number is your frame rate, or frames per second, or FPS. As the name implies, this is the number of picture frames in each second of the video. The lower the frame rate, the more motion blur in the video. The higher the frame rate, so the more frames in a second, the more you can slow it down and the footage will still look smooth. 24 frames per second is typically used for movies. 30 frames per second is used for TV shows and social media. 60 frames per second is usually footage that you need to slow down by 50%, which means that the footage will then be 30 frames per second and in slow motion. So 60 frames per second footage is typically used for B-roll. And there's also 120 frames per second and 240 frames per second. Each just have more frames per second and are used for super slow motion footage. The more frames you have in each second, the more you can slow down the footage and still keep it looking smooth. For example, 60 frames per second, you can slow it down by 50% while keeping it looking smooth. For 120 frames per second, you can slow it down to 25% of the original speed, and for 240 frames per second, you can slow it down to 12.5% of the original speed. It is important to understand frame rate because choosing the right frame rate can affect the final result and quality of the video. One of the mistakes that I see creators making is filming in 30 frames per second and then slowing it down a lot and causing the footage to look lower in quality because it doesn't have enough frames per second. For social media, I typically film in 30 frames per second, but I do know that many creators who have more of a film background prefer to film in 24 frames per second to give it a more cinematic look. There are also some mobile creators who prefer to film always in 60 frames per second because they think it looks more sharp, but really it just has more frames in 1 second and therefore has less motion blur. Ultimately, while it's best to choose the right frame rate for your purposes, you can film in 24, 30, or 60. It's not going to make or break the quality of your footage, but the footage will look slightly different. And of course, the file will take up more space if it's more frames per second, so definitely keep that in mind. Since we're on the topic of file size, many people ask me about how I store my videos, especially when I film them in 4K. I pay for 6 terabytes of iCloud footage, which is $30 a month. I've used 3.6 terabytes and have almost 200,000 photos and videos, 59K videos and 135K photos. It's not the best experience having to download the footage from iCloud just to view it or edit with it, but I prefer to do it this way so that I can always keep my footage secure in the cloud in case I ever want to reuse old footage on the go, and also because I travel a lot and I tend to lose things, so I can't risk losing my phone with all of my videos and photos on it. In terms of camera footage, I always offload them onto SSD drives like these. This is 2 terabytes and this is 4, and create folders and label them appropriately. Now let's talk about the settings to film your videos in. I'll start by showing you my camera settings. I want to show you how I set up my camera settings inside my iPhone 15 Pro so that you can see why I chose the settings that I chose. And I will also link a couple videos down below for Android users and what settings other people have recommended for video. So first of all, when recording video, I always choose 4K at 30 frames per second because we've already mentioned that 30 frames per second is the ideal frame rate for social media. Of course, if you prefer more of a film look, you can do 24 as well. I never use any of these because I always film in 4K. Now, if you want to film 60 frames per second, you can choose 4K at 60 frames per second, and this will take up a lot of your space, so I do not recommend it. And you can reference the following that they have listed here to get an idea of how large the file sizes will get and how much larger it would be if you film at a higher frame rate in 4K. Now, one thing I want to share with you is this Show PAL formats. If you are ever filming inside a situation where you get the lights flickering, then you can choose this 4K at 25 frames per second, brackets PAL, and that will stop the flickering of the lights. However, I generally don't really do that, and because also I forget to switch it back, so I try to just keep it at 30 frames per second. I have enhanced stabilization turned on simply because I have a lot of movement in my videos, and you could also choose action mode in lower light so that it will decrease the stabilization to optimize for brighter scenes. What this means is that it will lower the shutter speed so that your videos will have a little bit more motion blur. It will look a little more blurry the moment you move the camera slightly. However, it will in turn decrease the ISO, which means the artificial light added to the video. And so what that means is that if you are not moving and you're filming at night, then you can turn on action mode lower light, because then there won't be much motion blur because you're not moving at all, but the quality of the video will be higher. And if you are moving around and there is motion blur and you don't mind that, but you want the quality of the video to be higher in lower light, then you can also turn that on. I personally don't mind it off, so that's why I have that off. And then I always recommend that you turn off HDR video. And this is no matter what type of phone you're using, an iPhone or Android or anything. HDR video, while it may look like the colors are really balanced when you're in a situation where the lighting contrast is very, very large, it ultimately does not fit well with a lot of editing softwares and will make the color profile look really funky. This is especially true if you're taking an iPhone footage and editing it inside Premiere Pro. Of course, this course we do not cover Premiere Pro. We're using free mobile apps so that it can make it really easy for you to edit. But that's just one thing to note, and I wanted to mention why I don't film in HDR. Next thing, auto frames per second, auto FPS. So basically what this does is it will automatically reduce the frame rate of your videos to 24 frames per second in a low light setting to improve the low light video. I just have this turned on, but I've never paid attention to this. And honestly, it doesn't make much of a difference. Next, lock camera just means, when you are moving your camera around vertically, horizontally, whether you lock your camera or not. And locking your white balance is just locking the color that shows up on your video. I don't lock any of these because auto white balance is usually the best because you will be changing different lighting as you film different locations and scenarios. Next, let's talk about recording in slow-mo. So the default should be 1080p HD at 120 frames per second. I want to turn on the 1080p at 240 frames per second. That way you can access the 240 frames per second in HD like I have here. Otherwise, the default for 240 frames per second is not HD, not 1080p, but rather 720, which makes the file a lot slower. Of course, there are very few scenarios where we film in 240, so generally I use 120 frames per second HD to film any slow-mo. Next, formats. I always choose most compatible so that we will get the highest quality videos and it doesn't reduce the file size because I already pay for so much storage. And then also for photos, I turn on ProRAW, although we are not really talking about photos here. Next, I want to talk about the Apple ProRes. This is a new feature in iPhone 15 Pro where you can shoot raw video. I really, unless you're a professional videographer, I wouldn't recommend using this, or if you're a filmmaker. And in that case, you probably know a lot more about ProRes and raw video than I do, so I'm not going to go into that too much here, but basically it's just filming in raw video. And this is more for professional production, and you will have to know how to actually edit the colors of the raw video footage for it to look really good afterwards. Of course, it can be very powerful, but this is not what we're covering inside this program. I do want to mention preserve settings because this is something that helps me speed up my workflow. So I like to turn on the camera mode, preserve the last camera mode. For example, if you were filming mostly videos and you generally film videos, then by turning on preserve camera mode, when you open your camera, you will automatically go into your video rather than automatically resetting to photo. The portrait zoom was a default turned on when I came into the settings, but I do want to mention that I always have live photos turned on because although these are photos technically, sometimes they can be turned into boomerangs or other like video like tiny video footages. So I do like to turn on live photo in case it becomes useful later on. Next, I always have the grid turned on as well as level, and what that means is just that you have this 1/3 grid. So there are 2 lines vertically and 2 lines horizontally. And level just means when you move around, are you moving straight or not straight in the line? Then the level line should be able to tell you if you are no longer moving parallel. One more thing I want to mention is how I make sure that I can quickly access my video function. And the first thing that I did, and this is for iPhone 15, is I set up my action button, which is this top button on the left side here, as you can see in the demonstration, to video. And you can choose if you want selfie or photo or video or portrait. So I chose video. Unfortunately, you can't customize whether you want 0.5 camera or 1x camera because I would set it at 0.5 if I had the chance, because that is probably in most cases, if you're last minute needing to capture something, that would be the most useful. And so this is one of the ways I speed up the access to my video function. Another way that you can do that also is, let's say if you open up your photo, if you long hold on the shutter button, it will turn into a video. So you can start recording. But of course, notice that the ratio of the video is different and is not 9:16. What this means is that the size, the resolution of the video is actually smaller. So that is something to note. Now, if you want to not have to hold down, then you just have to scroll the bottom button to the right, and now you are filming without having to press on the button. It's just a way to quickly access your video button. Now, I do not really use this. I still recommend just going into the video settings so that you can film in 4K 9:16, but Just in case if you're in a hurry and you just need to record a video, this is an easy way to do it. Okay, now let's talk about actually filming. What do you need when filming to ensure the highest quality videos? This may sound like a no-brainer, but the biggest reason why your footages are coming up blurry is because you didn't wipe your camera lens and clean it. And trust me, everybody makes this mistake, including pro videographers I have worked with. So make sure to always wipe your camera lens. You can use anything to wipe, really. It won't damage the lens too much. Another thing also is try to add a protective cover to your camera lens, because if you don't and you put your phone in your bag or carry it around a lot, the camera lens will get scratched and that will make your footage blurry or affect your footage ultimately. Next, what app should you film your videos with? I always prefer that you film with your native camera on your phone and not film on any social media apps. You can use pro camera apps to film, and we'll touch upon that later. But please do not film your videos inside Instagram Reels, Instagram Stories, or TikTok whenever possible, and here's why. I just filmed a video each and downloaded them from TikTok, IG Stories, and IG Reels. Now let's swipe up to see the resolution of these videos. IG Stories and IG Reels are downloaded as 720 by 1080. That's even lower in resolution than a 1080p video. That's 720. TikTok videos are not as bad, downloaded as 1080 by 1920, but it's still lower quality than 4K, so still not preferable. Unless there's a filter or function in TikTok you absolutely must use, don't film an app and download the footage. Generally speaking, I don't encourage people film with filters either way, especially skin filters, because it tends to lower the quality due to the filter smoothing out the skin. You can also film using camera apps that support various different resolutions and allow you to customize your camera settings. I'll share 2 camera apps that are useful and show you how to customize your camera settings within them. Let's take a look at the Pro Camera app. So inside the Pro Camera app, you can use the same functions as you do for your iPhone, where you can switch between the lenses. And at the bottom here, this is what I kind of want to show you. You can customize the shutter speed. Let's say you want to do really low shutter speed so that when you move around there is more motion blur, then you can customize that here. Whereas inside your built-in camera app for your phone, you can't customize these things. So for example, you can go in and change your white balance manually. You can do a lot of things manually in here. Now, one more thing I wanted to mention is that when you film, you can also change the aspect ratio up here when you are filming. And you can also choose if you want flash or not. And then of course you can flip your camera, etc. Now, what this does is it just gives you more control over these settings if you understand the exposure triangle. And I will link a video down below about the basics of the exposure triangle so that you understand what shutter speed is and what ISO is and why this matters. And then also, I want to explain why I use the Pro Camera app. So, let me show you through an example. So let's say you need to do a wipe up video like this. Wipe. Did you see the little hesitation as the video was about to wipe up? Let me just replay that really quickly. See that hesitation? That actually was not a manual mistake. That is actually a function within the iPhone where it will automatically stabilize your phone if it thinks that you are moving around. So because you're about to make this wipe action, your phone thinks that it has to correct it for you. So it actually brings your frame back like this. So there's a hesitation. And I actually learned this during a trip in Paris when we were trying to do a simple whip pan transition. And no matter how the videographer filmed it, he just could not get this little moment of hesitation out of the video. And so we realized that it was actually a built-in iPhone filming function to prevent your footage from looking really shaky. And so that's why we switched to using the Pro Camera app, because inside this app, when you whip with this app, there is no built-in stabilization that the camera for your iPhone app does have. So let me show you now what it looks like when it's filmed in Pro Camera. So first of all, you can already see that it's slightly shakier than your iPhone camera. And then just look at the part where it wipes up. There's no hesitation there. So you see, let's just replay that one more time. That was a direct wipe up. So that is the difference between using an app like the Pro Camera app versus using your built-in camera on your iPhone, which helps to stabilize your clips. It's meant to be a great function, but then in the case of a whip pan, it actually sort of doesn't work in your favor. So this is why I use an app like Pro Camera. The next app I want to show you is the Blackmagic Cam. So when you come into the app, the default actually is this horizontal traditional film ratio. So you want to go into the settings and enable vertical video first. And you can also set your resolution. You could play with these various things here and go through the settings, but there's a lot that you could set up. Similarly, allows you a lot of custom functions. For example, you can change the shutter speed, you can change the ISO, the frames per second, what type of lens you're using, etc., etc. I would say this looks like a really pro camera. Where maybe if you're a filmmaker or maybe if you're shooting on ProRes, you could definitely use this and really customize all of your settings. Now, it does require that you have camera knowledge in order to play around with all of these settings, and that's not what our program covers, but I will link down below some videos to guide you through what these settings mean. Lastly, let's talk about lighting. Lighting plays a huge role in producing high quality footage. This applies whether you're using your phone camera or your professional camera. When it comes to lighting for phone footage, because the settings are automatic, if you're in a darker environment, it will automatically adjust the ISO to be much higher, and that results in very grainy footage. Even if you feel like your phone is able to capture video better in low light, it's actually sacrificing the quality a lot. So the number one rule when it comes to lighting for videos is to film in good lighting. The best type of lighting you could possibly find is natural light. Just take a look at these 3 videos. One is filmed with very little natural light, another is filmed without facing natural light, and the last one is filmed directly facing natural light. The difference is huge. Whenever I'm filming my reels, I try to do so when the sun is out, and I open all of my curtains as much as possible. If you do not have access to natural light in your home, then that's when lighting equipment can help. If you're just starting out, a simple ring light will suffice, just to add some brightness to your video. Here's a quick tip on how to set up your ring light for a nicer look.
So you guys are watching Jessica Alba's makeup video and thinking, she's using a ring light. But the light from her ring light looks so much better than yours because she knows a trick you don't. But guess what? I know a trick and I'm going to show you. 95% of you are using the ring light wrong. Let's look at the problems. The tip of my nose is the brightest part of the nose. There's the same amount of light on my face and on my neck, and there are these dark patches over here. Why? Because the lens is too high up and the bottom half of the ring light uplights my face. So step 1 is to detach the phone from the ring light and place it on a separate stand. Step 2 is to raise the light up in height and tilt it forward on a 45-degree angle and place the lens of your phone at the bottom of the ring light. Now, the bridge of the nose is the brightest. Instead of the tip, there is less light on the neck and the cheekbones look stronger because the cheeks got darker. Step 3 is to apply a filter to make the skin tones look better. I use the Visco app. If you want me to make a video on how to use it, let me know in the comments. Share this video with a friend who uses a ring light and follow me to learn more.
I will also link a couple ring light options in the description. If you're traveling and can't bring a ring light with you, then I recommend small LED panel lights like this one. You can also get these light wand sticks. Some of them have multiple color options and can help create mood lighting. If you want to take it a step further, then I would suggest setting up a 3-point lighting system. Before I continue though, I do want to say that this is not crucial to making short form videos. Unless you plan to start a YouTube channel, you can simply use natural lighting or just a tripod and some lamps that you have at home to make your footage brighter and better quality. But if you're interested in setting up better lighting, then keep watching. 3-point lighting is, as the name suggests, a lighting set up using 3 lights. The first light is a key light. This is usually placed at a 45-degree angle to your face and is a main light source. The next is the fill light. This is a light that helps to reduce the shadows created by your key light. It usually is placed on the opposite side of your face, also at a 45-degree angle, but is a little less brighter than the key light. Lastly, the backlight. As the name suggests, this is a light that is placed behind you. The purpose of this is to add depth to the video, separates you from the background, and it can also create a nice rim light around your hair. Now, I am not a lighting expert, so I'm going to link several videos down below for you to reference if you want to level up your lighting game. Remember that this is not crucial, but a nice to have when it comes to Reels or TikToks. Also, this isn't the only way to light your videos. Here's an alternative way by TikTok creator Aaron Sogi to use 3 lights to make your videos look better.
Stop using your ring light like an amateur. If you own a ring light and a couple of other lamps and this is how your face looks like and you want it to look more like this, then 30 seconds from now, you will know exactly what to do. A very common lighting mistake I see on TikTok is having a ring light around the phone and 1 lamp on either side of it. Bad idea. You are going to get 3 highlights in each eye that creates a very unnatural look and your face has no shape. Some of you use 3 ring lights from the front. I have nicknamed you as the Lord of the Rings. You see what I did there? Anyway, now turn off these 2 lamps. Let's get rid of these dark patches. Instead of the tip of the nose being the brightest, let's make the bridge the brightness. All you gotta do is simply raise the height of the lamp. Before, after, before, after. Now place the other 2 lamps at 10 o'clock and at 2 o'clock to get these nice edge lights on your face. Whatever 2 lamps you have, this technique will work. So we have just gone from looking like this to looking like this with the same lamps.
And if you already have a ring light and want to turn it into a softbox, check out this tutorial.
Stop using your ring light like an amateur. If you want your skin to look amazing in your videos, then you gotta try this. I've been fortunate enough to light many famous people in the past, but we never ever use a ring light. We normally use a round or an octagonal softbox like this one. I'm going to show you the best ring light hack that nobody is doing. Get an 80cm umbrella softbox for only $27. Pull it over your stand, then grab your ring light. I said grab, not drop. Tilt it slightly forward. Now pull the softbox over it, add the diffuser, and boom.
And you don't necessarily need 3 lights for your lighting to look better. Even if you just have 2 lights, there are ways to set it up to make your video lighting better. Here's a quick tutorial.
The most common lighting mistake I see on TikTok is called car headlight lighting. It is caused by having a lamp on either side of your phone. 2 highlights in each eye creates a very unnatural look and your face looks awful. You can look like this with the same lamps in different positions. The worst I've seen is 3 ring lights around the phone. The eyes look like a mess and the face has no shape. In film school, my teacher would say, "All together, no idea." So you are standing in the middle of the clock and your phone is at 6 o'clock. Turn off this lamp. Now move the lamp at 5 o'clock as close as you can without coming into the frame. Raise the height so the highlight in the eye ends up in the upper corner of the eye. Now instead of placing the other lamp at 7 o'clock, we are going to move it to 10 o'clock to get a nice edge light. And now we have just gone from looking like this to looking like this with the same lamps.
Lighting is important when making any video because it produces higher quality videos, but there's another aspect of lighting that's especially important when you are making duplication videos and video edits that require masking, and that is the consistency of the light. We'll elaborate on this later, but when you're filming a video where you need to combine 2 clips by layering them on top of each other to make them 1 clip, then masking out certain parts, the lighting should be as consistent as possible throughout your filming process so that you need to do minimal editing of the color and lighting of these 2 clips when editing. More on that in a later lesson. So those are the basics of capturing high quality video footage, and in the next lesson we'll talk more about the techniques when you are filming in order to get the best footage.